After 10 long years, this cowboy discovers an incredible dinner that transformed his life forever. Wyatt Jameson stood in the dim light of the attic, the dust swirling around him as he refused to breathe in, as if that would somehow preserve the memory of his grandmother. She had filled this house with laughter and love, minus the echoes of his own shattered dreams. For 10 years he'd buried his culinary ambitions, sacrificing everything to keep the family ranch afloat after his father passed. Cooking had been an art, a vibrant escape. But the rural setting he loved turned his dreams into burdens. The weight felt insurmountable, and he'd wrestled with the bitterness it bred within him. Sorting through old belongings, he stumbled upon a recipe box. As he lifted the lid, the musty scent of aged paper enveloped him. Tucked away were handwritten notes in his grandmother's elegant cursive, spilling tales of family dinners that rippled with warmth. One particular recipe stood out, rich with flavors and layered with emotion. It conjured scents of fresh herbs and roasted meats, memories that tethered him to his childhood. He could almost hear his grandmother's laughter amid the clanking of pots, rekindling a flicker of hope in his chest. But that light was dimmed by the harsh whispers of rival ranchers, men who had derided him as soft for holding on to a lost dream. The anxiety gnawed at him. Could he truly embrace cooking again in a community that expected grit and raw toughness from a cowboy? What if they laughed? What if it turned into yet another failure layered upon the ones he'd already faced? He hesitated, wrestling with the palpable fear of rejection versus the yearning to finally step into the person he wanted to be. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With a tentative heart, he decided to honor his grandmother. A potluck, he thought. The memories swirled like the dust motes in the air, but the tension was suffocating. News of his culinary plans spread like wildfire, igniting jeers from rival ranchers that echoed mockingly in his mind. What a joke, Wyatt. Cooking like a woman, are ya? The laughter taunted him, constricting his throat. It wasn't until fate stepped in the form of Joey, a retired chef who had operated a renowned restaurant down the road. With his grizzled beard and twinkling eyes, he saw something in Wyatt that he didn't fully see in himself. "You've got the fire, kid," Joey said, his gravelly voice cracking with conviction. Through stilted lessons amidst the sizzling pans, Wyatt grappled with his fears as he began to whip up the cherished dish. As the potluck date loomed closer, moments grew heavy with self-doubt. He battled a storm of emotions, questioning every choice, every ingredient. But perhaps, he thought, this was what he needed. A chance to prove himself not just to the community, but to the cowboy buried within. One longing for more than rugged fields and endless cattle. Then the night arrived, veiled in stars and silence. Wyatt, battling the ghosts of ridicule, gazed at the sea of faces, both familiar and taunting. As he stirred his grandmother's recipe in a large pot, he sensed the weight of all his lost dreams. Would this meal be the bridge that connected him to who he used to be? Or would it once again become a reminder of the man he failed to become? Fear gripped him tightly as he served the dish, daring to hope that maybe, just maybe, the echoes of judgment would fade into the background. The aroma filled the night, rising like a plea, but only time would tell if one meal could truly alter the fabric of his life forever. Wyatt's heart raced as faces blurred into an indecipherable mass. He could feel their scrutinizing gazes burrow into him, some skeptical, others curious. As he scooped the first serving of his grandmother's cherished dish into a bowl, memories surged through him, the humble kitchen, laughter, and the pure joy of flavor blossoming under his hands. But these recollections were now under siege from the impending judgment of peers who viewed creativity as weakness. He stood at the makeshift serving table, every fiber of his being screaming to flee. to retreat to the safety of routine and familiarity. "You're doing this for her," he whispered, gripping the ladle with newfound resolve. Joey had taught him more than just techniques. He had reignited the very essence of cooking within Wyatt. There was power in creation, an artistry he had buried beneath years of responsibility. "Look at that!" A voice broke through the crowd. It belonged to Bill, one of the louder contenders among rival ranchers. "Think he can really whip up something worthwhile? Maybe we can get him on a cooking show, the Cowboy chef or something." Laughter rippled through the group, but it didn't echo as harshly as it once would have. Instead, a flicker of defiance began to kindle within him. He had survived the last 10 years honing the ability to push through harder tasks, to make sacrifices. But it took guts to embrace tenderness alongside toughness. Would anyone understand that about him? As he served the first dish, a tingle of fear coursed through his veins. What if this came through as a failure? But then he caught a glimpse of Joey standing back with a silent nod of encouragement. That single moment, just a flash of connection, reaffirmed Wyatt's resolve. With a deep breath, he faced the crowd. "I'm not just cooking for you, I'm rediscovering who I am." As he dished out portions, a few forks fell silent and some ranchers fumbled with their plates, curiosity peaking slowly. Wyatt tasted criticisms on the back of his tongue. Could he reclaim what he loved, despite the weight of their scrutiny? With each serving, both he and the crowd experienced a challenging yet enlightening transformation. As people took the first bites, their faces shifted. The initial grimaces morphed into expressions of surprise. Whispers of appreciation began permeating the air. "This is actually incredible, Wyatt," said Tara, a local who had never held back on her opinions about his pursuits. A wave of unanticipated pride welled within him. But amidst the rising tide of approval, shadows stirred in his mind. Was one meal enough to pave the way for a new identity? The laughter of Bill lingered like a smoky aftertaste. What if they still reduced him to the soft cowboy, no matter the praise? The potluck gradually murmured into life, conversations shifting as more people ascended toward the warmth of his dish. Laughter now mixed with admiration, weaving a fabric he had thought lost to him. Amid the noise, those small victories began to billow in his heart. However, the pressure to sustain this momentum weighed heavily on Wyatt. This was not an end, but merely the beginning of a daunting journey. He craved not just acceptance, but mastery, the ability to weave tales through food, to elevate moments into memories. "Tomorrow," he pondered as he caught Joey's eye again, "I'll keep cooking." The thought electrified him. The night deepened, but though the stars scattered the darkness, uncertainty loomed over his future. The real test would come not from mere acceptance but from taking this single victory and turning it into a life of culinary exploration, one he feared he might fall short of. Yet as the moon cast a silver glow over his journey ahead, one undeniable truth crystallized within him. The potluck had unveiled new layers of himself, and he was ready to embrace whatever came next. And in that moment of contemplation, a fresh worry stirred, trickling into his thoughts, uninvited yet insistent. What would happen if, embracing this new path, he lost everything he had held dear? Wyatt woke to the soft light of dawn spilling through the kitchen window, an invitation to rise and confront the day. The warmth felt different today, almost electric, resonating with the triumph from the night before. He could still taste the sweetness of praise and the satisfaction of creation, but moments from the previous night whispered harsh truths in the quiet of the morning. As he sipped coffee, his thoughts swirled around the implications of his newfound resolve. The joy of rediscovery clashed with the looming fear that one culinary success could easily spiral into the abyss of expectation. Could he truly transform this fleeting moment into a lifelong journey? He questioned the depth of his culinary knowledge and whether he possessed the grit to pursue not just acceptance, but excellence. "Time to step it up," he declared, almost like an incantation. The kitchen, once a place of obligation, had become a sanctum of possibilities. He recalled Joey's lessons, simple yet powerful. Cooking wasn't merely about procedure, but about storytelling. Each ingredient, each technique was a brushstroke on the canvas of his life. But beyond culinary passion lay a daunting landscape of self-doubt and the specter of Bill's ridicule. Wyatt's fingers brushed against his grandmother's old cookbooks, dusty yet brimming with knowledge. Pulling one down, he flipped through faded pages, finding solace in recipes imbued with memories. These meals were not just sustenance. They were heritage, an intersection of flavors that told who he was and who he aspired to be. He felt a sudden rush of determination. Today would mark the beginning of his development, not just as a cook, but as an artist. His heart raced as he planned a series of meals, each serving a stepping stone toward mastery. He envisioned experimenting with flavors that danced on the palate while echoing his upbringing. As he gathered ingredients from the local market, Wyatt found himself engaged in conversations with familiar faces. Each exchange sparked new ideas, and he felt buoyed by shared laughter over recipes and anecdotes. His confidence began to bloom. What if he approached his culinary journey as a collaboration, drawing from the community around him? The thought electrified him, and yet a heavier realization dawned. Each dish would be scrutinized, not only by acquaintances but also by himself. Already the vivid taste of his grandmother's stew mingled with anxiety. Would he measure up to expectations, against his own buried fears? Back in the kitchen, he gathered fresh herbs, spices, and vegetables, meticulously prepping each ingredient. He embraced the hum of the kitchen, the chirp of chopping, the sizzle of oil in the pan. Cooking was a meditative experience, a dialogue between heart and technique. A voice gradually surfaced in him, a strong reminder of the commitment he had made to himself. "This isn't just about cooking," he whispered. "It's about becoming who I'm meant to be." As he stirred the pot, he envisioned future gatherings, bustling with laughter, good food, and a sense of belonging that had eluded him for years. Then, as he plated a vibrant dish, a thought flashed in his mind. What if his professional growth extended beyond the kitchen? He pictured classes where he could share his journey, ignite interest in budding chefs, and inspire others with stories that lived within the food. Until now, he had feared being seen as soft, a label that could overshadow his ambition. Yet in this moment, he found a burgeoning sense of strength. Not only could he embrace the tender-heartedness of cooking, but he could also wield it as a tool to forge deeper connections. But even as he felt empowered, a lingering question refused to fade. How would the community react to this evolving Wyatt? Would acceptance come with open arms, or would old prejudices rise to the surface? The final bite, rich and infused with intention, brought him back to the present. He took a calming breath, igniting hope within boundless uncertainty. The day ahead promised challenges, opportunities, and perhaps other doubts to combat. Yet he felt the first sparks of possibility. The future awaited, tense with both excitement and anxiety. Tomorrow would arrive with fresh hurdles, but today, he prepared to stand firmly in his new identity. Or would he buckle under the pressure of expectations? The kitchen beckoned with the thrill of opportunity. Where every meal would be more than a dish, it would be a new chapter. He couldn't help but smile, even as the worry lurked in the background. Somehow, he was reconciling the myriad aspects of himself. But the time had come to face a deeper conflict. Would the risk of following his passion ultimately lead to the loss of the life he'd built? Wyatt stood at the kitchen counter, his heart racing as he stared at the ingredients sprawled before him. Fresh basil, heirloom tomatoes, and a gleaming piece of fish waited to be transformed. This was his moment, a chance not only to create, but to solidify the commitment he had made to himself. He was shifting from being a reluctant cook to a determined chef, from merely following recipes to crafting experiences. He took a deep breath and began chopping the basil. The scent burst forth, filling the room with a freshness that invigorated his spirit. Each slice was a declaration of intent, reaffirming his journey toward mastery. This wasn't just cooking. It was a metaphorical dismantling of the walls around his self-doubt. His mind circled back to his encounter at the market. The warmth of the shared laughter with vendors felt golden, but the contradictory chill of doubt loomed. Had he truly made an impression on them? Would they still regard him as that guy rather than a burgeoning chef? The fear of being underestimated tugged at his mind, but he pushed it aside. Today he would not allow fear to dictate his choices. As he prepared the meal, memories flooded back. His grandmother stirring sauces, the rhythmic clatter of pots and pans, her insistence on sourcing the finest ingredients. He understood now how vital those lessons were, how they formed the backbone of his culinary identity. Each memory was a stepping stone leading him back to the core of who he was. Meanwhile, he pondered how he might bridge the divide between his personal aspirations and his professional facade. Cooking was inherently solitary, an intimate act, yet it held the potential for connection. With that realization, he decided to document his culinary journey. He could start a blog, a place where he shared not just recipes, but stories. The laughs, the slip-ups, the inspiration behind each dish. Each post would force him to reflect, to articulate his evolving identity and articulate the roots of his passion. The idea filled him with a renewed sense of purpose, but then came the familiar wave of apprehension. Sharing himself, his thoughts, his work, seemed terrifying. What if critics pointed out his flaws? What if it was a cacophony of judgment instead of the symphony of support he hoped for? He was about to take an enormous risk, revealing his vulnerabilities to the world. His hands moved on automatic, stirring the simmering sauce with confidence he didn't entirely feel. Cooking became an escape, thoughts unwinding like the spaghetti twisting in the pot. Was it too late to transform his role in the culinary world? Could he truly evolve past the ridicule he feared from Bill, or even the quiet judgment he sensed from friends? Wyatt's introspection redirected as he plated the meal artfully, creating an assembly of colors and textures. He captured the essence of the dish while glancing at each meticulously chosen ingredient. It came alive in front of him, each component a testament to the work he'd put in, with the mingled flavors echoing his story. Setting the table, he reached for the bottle of wine to complement the dish, a small indulgence. As he looked around his kitchen, he felt it morphing into a sanctuary designed not just for feeding but for thriving, encouraging both growth and courage. Then across the room, his phone buzzed. Notifications flooded in from the blog he had launched impulsively that very night. His heart raced again, a mix of excitement and anxiety. He was stepping into uncharted territory, ready to share his journey publicly. What if he found unexpected support or even inspiration from others? But additional self-doubt crept in. Would he have the stamina to keep up this momentum? As the dish sat waiting, he felt a whirlwind of anticipation and anticipation gnawing at his resolve. Would this leap into the unknown cultivate patience within him, or would bitter fear chase him back into obscurity? Just beyond the threshold of the kitchen, the flutter of possibility beckoned, but so did ghosts of the past, ready to challenge his will. Tomorrow promised not just a meal, but also an unveiling. The chance to discover who he truly was beneath the layers shaped by insecurity. As he prepared to dive into that new world, one question loomed large in his mind. Could he forge a new identity from the ashes of his self-doubt? Or would the weight of his old self threaten to drag him back into silence? Wyatt awoke to the sound of his phone chiming persistently beside him, a rush of notifications cascading down the screen like a waterfall. It reminded him that he had taken his first step towards a journey he had long contemplated, an endeavor that had the potential to reshape not just his culinary skills but his very identity. The vulnerability fluttered in his stomach like a trapped bird, grappling with anticipation and dread. He swung his legs off the bed and planted his feet on the cold floor, grounding himself. He took a moment to breathe, assessing his surroundings. The kitchen felt heavy from the night's fervent energy, a stark contrast to the silence in his bedroom. He needed to tread carefully today, as each move would reflect his commitment to himself, an opportunity to either advance or retreat. As he brewed his coffee, he replayed the pivotal thoughts circulating through his mind, amplifying the motivations behind his decision to share his journey. It was time to confront the fear he harbored about judgment, to lay bare his vulnerabilities. He found a pulse of determination deep within, urging him onward. Today, he wouldn't just cook. He would embrace the revelation of his truth. With his coffee in hand, Wyatt drifted onto the kitchen floor, a flicker of excitement illuminating his intentions. He planned to elevate not just the food but the experience of cooking itself, allowing those who read his blog to peer into the very essence of what transformed an ingredient into a dish filled with passion. He cracked open his laptop, breathing in the comforting smell of roasted beans mingling with the fragrance of fresh basil, a sensory tapestry reflecting his journey. Fingers poised over the keyboard, he hesitated. Silence filled the house, punctuated only by distant birds flitting outside. This was one of those moments that separate the dreamers from the doers, he mused. Exposing himself to the world was fraught with peril, but the allure of connection, the potential for shared experiences, danced before him. His first post began to form, layered with his thoughts and fears, a story recalling childhood lessons from his grandmother. He wanted others to sense that cooking was not just a series of actions but a relationship with the ingredients, a respectful dialogue with tradition and memory. As the words flowed, he felt himself shedding layers of insecurity. The act of creating the post became a reflection of his evolution, each sentence a building block fortifying his fragile identity as a chef. He smiled as he wrote, energized by the prospect of something grander than mere food preparation. A shared humanity brought forth by the universal experience of cooking and tasting. Yet, lurking beneath this excitement, lay the specter of self-doubt, the relentless whisper of what if, clawing at him. What if no one cared to read about his journey? What if the trolls came out to feast on his vulnerabilities? The time had come to face those questions. Wyatt had often shielded himself from disappointment, vaulting hurdles before they even appeared. But this felt different. He was ready to confront them head-on. He wrapped up his post, letting it embody the full spectrum of his emotions, showcasing his rawness. Before hitting publish, he took a deep breath, feeling the weight of expectation settle on his shoulders. He closed his eyes briefly, envisioning the potential readers who might connect, who might find inspiration in his struggles and triumphs. There was a quiet strength emerging within, which reminded him that authenticity, even if it's messy, is far better than polished pretenses. With a final click, he launched the post into the digital void, releasing a flurry of possibility. With every nerve tingling, Wyatt stepped into a new phase of his professional and personal development. He could feel the potentiality of this leap echoing in the back of his mind. What hitherto unknown challenges lay on the horizon? But today wasn't just about cooking a meal or gaining followers. That leap stirred another question within him. Might he confront old acquaintances, like Bill, who symbolized the self-doubt he desperately sought to dismantle? What might happen when worlds collided? As he readied himself for the day, Wyatt braced for the intricate dance between confronting his past and embracing the limitless potential of his future. The time had come to face the music. But could he confront those old perceptions and redefine what it meant to be a chef? Wyatt spent the morning pacing through his routine, but the familiar motions felt foreign today. The aroma of coffee filled the air, yet he could taste the bitterness of uncertainty lingering at the back of his throat. Today wasn't just another day. It was a pivot point, the moment he anticipated since launching his blog. He had shared his fears online, broadcasting his vulnerability, but now he needed to confront the reality of those emotions in the flesh. The clock ticked towards noon, the sun casting sharp shadows across the kitchen floor like a countdown. Bill was supposed to visit soon, and the thought set his heart racing. It had been years since they last crossed paths, the last recollections fading like an unfinished recipe. Bill represented more than just a friend from his past. He embodied the judgments that had crippled Wyatt's confidence. The memory of their last argument still stung, a jagged reminder of how easily words can wound. He closed his eyes, leaning against the counter, recalling how they used to spend afternoons experimenting with ingredients, laughing over culinary failures that were often just stepping stones to better dishes. Those exchanges had felt easy, filled with camaraderie, but now there was weight in each thought. Would Bill affirm Wyatt's new path? Or would he still see him as that uncertain cook who wilted under the criticism? The sound of the doorbell jolted him out of his reverie. Each step towards the door felt heavier than the last, an anchor pulling him back to the insecurity he longed to escape. He opened the door, revealing Bill, who stood there familiar yet strangely distant, as if years of separation had distorted their camaraderie. The friendly banter he used to rely on felt awkward and forced now. "Wyatt," Bill greeted, his tone oscillating between friendliness and an implied challenge. "Hey, Bill, come in," Wyatt replied, stepping aside to let him through. They settled at the kitchen table, the atmosphere taut. Wyatt offered Bill a cup of coffee, desperate for some comfort, but he knew this moment was about to turn. "Big changes, I see," Bill remarked, eyeing the laptop still open on the counter, a portal to Wyatt's newfound aspirations. Wyatt swallowed hard, heat creeping up his neck. "Yeah, I've been writing about my experiences and I just wanted to share cooking the way I learnt from my grandmother. It's different." Bill raised an eyebrow, the skepticism dripping from that look. Different how? With each question, Wyatt felt a pressing need to defend his journey, as if to convince both Bill and himself of its validity. This was a definitive moment, the threshold of rejection or acceptance, a tightrope act between the past and the future. "It's about connection," Wyatt began slowly, choosing his words like ingredients measured precisely. "It's more than just recipes. It's about sharing a piece of who we are. I wrote that on my blog." The silence that followed hung heavily, charged with memories. Bill's gaze was unfaltering, dissecting Wyatt's words. "You think just sharing your journey can make you a chef? It's not just about feelings." There it was, his worst fear embodied in a single phrase: doubt. It rushed through Wyatt like a wave, threatening to engulf his resolve. Could he adequately express the depth of what cooking meant to him? All the past moments in the kitchen, all the failures, the triumphs, felt insignificant in the face of Bill's skepticism. But Wyatt remembered the grounded pulse of determination that emerged during the writing of his blog post. Taking a breath, he leaned in. "Maybe it's not just about recognized titles. Cooking is an art form, and I want my art to inspire." Bill studied him, the lines on his forehead deepening in concentration. "And what if no one cares?" The challenge ignited a fire within Wyatt. "Then I'll keep cooking for those who do." He felt the shift in the room, the energy swirling with potential. This wasn't just a discussion, it was a reckoning. As they talked, Wyatt found himself more invested in articulating his vision, energized by the belief that he was indeed in the throes of transformation. Yet beneath the surface he sensed a stirring discontent. Was he truly succeeding? The conversation meandered between discussions of food and deeper revelations, exposing not just his longings but also the shackles of expectation he held. With the contours of uncertainty still mapped in his mind, Wyatt couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was far from over. The confrontation had begun, but what would the outcome be? He turned the last bite of their conversation over in his mind, like the final part of a recipe just waiting for the perfect twist. As they walked to the door, Wyatt knew something had shifted, but it wasn't as clear as he would have liked. Trusting in his authenticity felt tantalizing, yet terrifying. With every step, that unsettling mix of hope and dread loomed over him. What challenges awaited his newfound resolve? Could he turn this confrontation with Bill into a source of strength, or would it deepen the cracks in his burgeoning identity as a chef? As Wyatt stepped out into the daylight, a thought echoed within. Perhaps today's dialogue was merely the beginning of a more profound culinary narrative. Would he be brave enough to embrace it? Stepping outside, the sun blazed over Wyatt, highlighting his shadow as he ventured into the chaos of the world beyond his kitchen. Each footfall echoed the uncertainty still churning inside him. Could he really carve a space for himself in the culinary landscape, especially when someone from his past, someone who once stoked his insecurities, now loomed in his mind? He took a deep breath, inhaling the crisp, late spring air, trying to ground himself in this new journey. The vibrant yellows and greens surrounding him felt almost like a challenge, a vivid reminder of the life blossoming amidst personal turmoil. But what did it take to truly claim a place at that table? The notion of identity loomed over him, tethered to the belief that he had to prove himself not only to Bill, but also to the lingering doubts in his heart. As he returned to work, his laptop glared back, a stark reminder of the blog posts he had poured his soul into. Wyatt opened the document harboring his latest entry, but words seemed elusive now, slipping through his fingers like grains of salt. The confidence he had felt earlier dimmed under Bill's challenge. Suddenly, the blog didn't just represent his triumph. It became a mirror reflecting his vulnerabilities, magnifying his fears of inadequacy. With a sigh, he pushed back from the desk. He needed clarity, a strategy to fuse his culinary vision with the authenticity he craved. Perhaps this was where the true work lay, not just in creating recipes, but in revolutionizing his mindset, his approach. Decision made, Wyatt grabbed his car keys and headed for the farmer's market, a sanctuary of fresh ingredients that always inspired his creativity. As he navigated through the market stalls, the vibrant colors brought life back to his weary spirit. Fresh herbs, sun-ripened tomatoes, and fragrant spices called to him, weaving pockets of possibility into the web of doubt that had ensnared him. Where had he lost himself? He realized that each ingredient he picked up represented a fragment of his past. The tomatoes sparked memories of summer afternoons with his grandmother, and the earthy scent of cilantro reminded him of his first attempts at seasoning properly. It wasn't just food, it was legacy. Yet, as the words had struggled in front of him at the kitchen table, he once again faced a choice. Let the whispers of doubt drown out these recollections, or allow them to ignite a deeper purpose. He could redefine their narrative, solidifying not just the taste of his food, but weaving the essence of storytelling into every dish. Inspiration flowed through him like a rushing river, ready to reshape the banks that had been so rigid until now. The cashier offered a friendly smile as Wyatt paid for his bounty, and he found himself engaging in a brief conversation about seasonal cooking, something he had shied away from with his peers. A small but significant victory, he considered. Each interaction was a reminder he didn't need validation from others to validate his own journey. Clutching the produce, he left the market invigorated, purposefully crafting a plan in his mind. He envisioned a dinner party, a gathering centered around the concept of connection he sought to portray in his writing. Perhaps this would be the bridge between his culinary aspirations and the community he sought to inspire, crafting dishes that told stories, connecting the hearts around the table. Upon arriving home, Wyatt stood before the simmering pot of ideas, his mental recipe crystallizing as he set to work organizing the event in his mind. The thought of inviting both Bill and a few local food enthusiasts entered his consciousness, invigorating him. Each dish would not only represent his journey, but also invite others to share theirs, an exchange of flavors and life experiences. Yet a tinge of fear lurked in the corners of his mind. What if the dinner turned into another judgmental spectacle? What if Bill's doubts crept back, sowing doubt among the guests? The stakes felt higher than ever, and while he recognized this was part of his professional development, the roots of apprehension still gripped tight. But that was the essence of growth, wasn't it? He had to leap into the unknown, trusting he could whip up something transformative from the fusion of vulnerability and experience. Wyatt felt the adrenaline rush of a racing heart, the pulse of potential urging him forward. As the sun dipped below the horizon, deepening the colors in the sky, Wyatt made a decision. Tomorrow he would start contacting guests, testing the waters of connection and sharing his story, not only through his food, but through the community built around it. With every step sealing that resolve, a thought flickered through his mind. He was ready to confront not just the past but also the future, a future that promised a richer culinary narrative waiting to unfold. Would the dinner evolved from his ambition truly reflect the transformation he was striving for? Or were the fears of the past poised to overshadow him once more? The morning sun filtered through Wyatt's kitchen window as he scanned the spread of produce laid out before him. Tomatoes, basil, and a vibrant array of peppers invited him to weave a tapestry of flavor. Today felt different. The air was thick with possibility, and the weight of his decision thrummed in the back of his mind. As he began to chop the ingredients, he felt an unfamiliar mix of excitement and trepidation. He had a plan now, a focused goal to guide him. The dinner party wasn't merely a social gathering. It was an expression, a canvas where he would paint his narrative. The essence of his culinary identity was rooted in connections and storytelling. Each dish would carry with it the whispers of history, the warmth of family gatherings, and the shimmering hope of new beginnings. But with these exhilarating thoughts, doubts lingered, swirling around him like the scents he adored. He fished his phone from his pocket, heart racing as he prepared to reach out to potential guests. One by one, he began typing messages, extending invitations with a mix of eagerness and anxiety. Each name brought a rush of memories. The faces were etched in his mind, reflections of times he had shared laughter and meals with them. As he texted, Trevor, a local food blogger, caught his attention. Their previous interactions had sparked discussions that felt rich with creative potential, but he remembered how Trevor's questions had challenged him. Would inviting him be a stroke of genius or folly? What if he scrutinized Wyatt's culinary skills, exposing his insecurities? Wyatt shook his head. He needed this challenge. Perhaps Trevor's keen observations could refine his work rather than tarnish it. With each invitation sent, the knot in his stomach began to loosen. The act of sharing this part of himself felt liberating. It was a departure from isolation, a step toward tangible connection. He recalled the warmth of communal meals, how food broke barriers and created understanding. His shaky resolve strengthened as he imagined the stories that would emerge around his dining table, a space he was beginning to envision as sacred rather than vulnerable. Later that evening, as he stirred a simmering pot of marinara sauce, he marinated in thoughts of what was to come. The fear of judgment still swirled beneath the surface, yet he realized that his journey was mirrored in every simmering ingredient. Each garlic clove and each bay leaf represented not just flavor but tenacity and growth, distilling personal evolution into each culinary undertaking. He whispered a mantra to himself, a reminder that the heart of cooking was love, not perfection. His mind wandered to Bill, that specter of doubt. Wyatt couldn't allow Bill's critical past to taint his ambitious future. Flashes of their old culinary duels ignited in his memory, the heat of disagreement, the energy of competition. Would Bill join him at the table? Would they sit not as adversaries, but as allies, finding common ground through shared experiences? This thought opened up new conversations in his mind, stitching the patches of their fractured past into a potential future. Suddenly, Wyatt felt an audible shift within himself. The dinner party was not just the proving ground against his critics. It was a chance to forge alliances, to invite dialogue about vulnerability and strength over a steaming plate of pasta. As the clock ticked toward bedtime, he opened his laptop, ready to carve his thoughts into words. This wasn't just about the gastronomical experiences. He was etching a narrative that would capture not just the flavors, but the very essence of what it meant to belong. But just as clarity enveloped him, another shadow crossed his mind, the dread of exposure. By revealing his vulnerabilities, what if he dug up more from the past than he intended? Was he truly ready for that? With an exhale, he closed his laptop and made a firm resolution. He would embrace both the feast and the fear. He was not just inviting people to a meal. He was inviting them to navigate his complexity. As Wyatt placed his head on the pillow that night, he realized the journey ahead was laden with uncertainty, but it was also rich with opportunity. Rolling the idea over in his mind, a question emerged. Would the dinner transform him into the person he aspired to be, or would old ghosts of inadequacy return to haunt him when tested at that table? As dawn broke over Wyatt's kitchen the next morning, He felt the tangible tension of impending change. The sun poured its light across the countertop, illuminating the meticulously arranged ingredients for the dinner. It was the start of a new cycle, not just of cooking, but of self-discovery. Each item beckoned him to face his fears directly, to challenge the narratives he had held onto for too long. He began by selecting the vegetables, each color more vibrant than the last. As he sliced and diced, the rhythmic motion of the knife provided a comforting backdrop to a whirlwind of thoughts. With every chop, Wyatt contemplated the significance of those he had invited. They represented pivotal chapters of his life, bridging past and present. He would be gathering them into a single moment, a pivotal turning point that could redefine his trajectory. Amid this culinary choreography, Wyatt recalled his encounters with Trevor. They had shared engaging conversations, but Trevor's sharp criticism often lingered long after they parted. Would he view this meal as an opportunity for collaboration, or a stage for critique? The internal debate surged back. Was he truly willing to face the specter of judgment he had long avoided? His determination sharpened as he finished the marinara sauce, infusing it with fresh herbs and a hint of spice. It was an embodiment of his journey, complex, layered, and informed by experiences both bitter and sweet. Cooking had always been a personal reflection. Now it served as a parallel to his emotional landscape. With the sauce simmering, Wyatt shifted to preparations for the main dish. He wanted each plate to be an invitation, to express not only flavor, but the essence of who he was and who he aspired to become. Memories of Bill loomed large. The visceral rivalries they shared still burned in his mind. This dinner would require him to confront their past, an opportunity not just to cook, but to bridge gaps that had previously seemed insurmountable. As he worked, Wyatt wrestled his misgivings with a mantra forming in his mind. Vulnerability, he realized, was not weakness. It was the courage to share oneself, to blend past truths with the aspirations of the future, much like ingredients coming together in harmony. He took a deep breath, grounded in the present, where he had the power to influence how his story would unfold. He decided it was time to take further steps in his journey. Instead of merely preparing a meal, Wyatt grabbed his notebook, ready to jot down notes. He wanted the experience to be interactive, to spark meaningful conversations. Drawing on his memories of shared meals, he considered incorporating storytelling elements into the evening, inviting his guests to share their own tales and thereby weaving a richer tapestry of connection. But a question pressed on him. Would he be strong enough to invite vulnerability into the conversation? With these reflective thoughts swirling amidst the bubbling sauce, Wyatt's resolve strengthened. He would not back down. As he jotted down ideas, a vision emerged, an open dialogue, a shared experience around the table, an honest celebration of imperfections and triumphs. With anticipation mounting, Wyatt prepared the final touches of the meal and encapsulated this pivotal moment. He realized that the dinner was not merely a culinary showcase but an opportunity to dismantle the walls that past criticisms had built around him. In a final act of affirmation, he stood tall, allowing himself to feel both anxiety and excitement. A resolve crystallized in his heart. The time had come to face his critics, not as an adversary but as an equal. As he stepped back from the kitchen and surveyed the culmination of his efforts, Wyatt felt a bubbling energy within him. Could this dinner be the shift he had long contemplated? Would it mark not only the end of old patterns but the birth of new paths? With these thoughts pulsating in his mind, he suddenly realized what lay ahead was less about the meal itself and more about how it would transform every element of his being. And then, as if triggering a revelation, another thought struck him hard. If the evening didn't go as planned, how would he respond? Would he crumble under the pressure or rise to redefine the evening in any form necessary? Just as he felt that familiar weight rising, he knew he was about to embark on a transformative journey, one laden with the potential for incredible growth. Would he rise to become the person he always envisioned, or would the shadows of the past claim him when faced with tangible reality? Wyatt stood in his kitchen, the early evening light streaming through the window, casting a golden hue on the neatly arranged table set for his guests. A deep breath in filled his lungs with the rich aroma of roasted vegetables and simmering sauce. Tonight was not merely about the food, it was about reclaiming his identity, threading together his past with a hopeful future. He moved with purpose, arranging the final touches on each plate, carefully crafted portions of his grandmother's classic recipe, now infused with the essence of his journey, a blend of nostalgia and discovery. For the first time in years, he felt genuine pride coursing through him, bolstered by the realization that he was ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. The soft chime of the doorbell echoed through the house, jolting Wyatt from his thoughts. His heart raced. It was time. With every step towards the door, he could feel the weight of expectation pressing against him. This was more than just a potluck. It was a moment of reckoning. He gripped the handle, took a breath, and opened the door. "Hey, Wyatt," Trevor greeted with a wide smile, his suitcase of culinary tools in tow. Striding past, he surveyed the kitchen with palpable enthusiasm. Behind him arrived Tara and then Bill, the last to enter. Each guest carried their unique energy, some familiar, others filled with the air of newfound connections. "Looks amazing, man. Smells even better," Trevor said, glancing over Wyatt's carefully plated creations. "Thanks," Wyatt replied, warmth filling his voice. The small talk was a blur, fluttering around the room like the scents wafting from the dishes. Each interaction felt rich in potential, as if they were all stepping toward a collective understanding. He took a moment to soak it all in. This was not the uncomfortable gathering of old memories he had feared. This was new. As they began to serve each other, Wyatt felt a flicker of confidence ignite within him. He was threading stories through conversations as memories surfaced, echoing the laughter and warmth that had once filled these very walls. "Wyatt's been working on some new techniques," Tara commented, nodding approvingly at a fresh basil garnish. "What's your inspiration behind this dish?" With every question, Wyatt found his voice emerging more strongly. "It's inspired by my grandmother's old recipe, but also reflects my journey of rediscovery. Cooking is about connection, between flavors and people." Encouragement bubbled in the air. Every bite was met with nods and words of praise. He could see the skepticism slowly melting away, faces shifting from judgment to appreciation, as if they were all rediscovering themselves through his cooking. Then, as if sensing the collective warmth in the room, Wyatt decided it was time to speak his truth. "I want to thank you all for being here, especially Bill," he declared, locking eyes with his old rival. "We've had our differences, and I've let them cloud my journey. But tonight I'd like to invite everyone to share a story connected to food, how it shaped your lives." The room quieted. Even Bill's expression softened, sensing a vulnerability that transcended the past. Each guest began sharing. A tapestry of emotions, narratives, and shared laughter wove through the air as truths spilled forth like the dishes on their plates. Tara spoke of her grandmother's pies that taught her love. Trevor shared his struggle with fear before pursuing his passion for cooking. Wyatt observed this beautiful collage unfolding around him. He remembered his fears of rejection and doubt, but within this moment arose something transformative. Every story shared was a reflection not only of food, but of the fragility and strength of human connection. As the evening progressed, Wyatt felt the shadows of his past begin to evaporate. With each laugh, each connection, he realized that vulnerability was not something to shy away from. Rather, it was the bridge that connected people. In the closing moments of the evening, Bill raised his glass. "To food which has brought us together tonight," he toasted, his voice laden with sincerity. "And to Wyatt for bravely sharing not just his culinary skills, but his journey too." With those words, something profound clicked within Wyatt. In that moment he stood not merely as a chef, but as a man transformed, no longer constrained by past traumas, but liberated by the very essence of love and connection he had sought all along. As warmth encircled him, he smiled, feeling the culmination of years of struggle crystallize in this singular moment. Wyatt had not only cooked a meal, but had stitched together a new narrative. A narrative that celebrated the complexity of life, love, and the courage to step into one's true self. He had achieved recognition beyond the dish. He had earned acceptance not only from his peers but from himself. And as the stars began to twinkle brightly outside, he felt heavy layers of self-doubt peel away, leaving behind a solid foundation of clarity and purpose. Tonight, Wyatt conquered his fears, and with it, he established a position not just as a cook, but as someone ready to embrace the adventure of culinary exploration, cultivate community, and redefine who he was meant to be. This was the moment he had longed for, a true breakthrough. And as he basked in the laughter and shared stories of the evening, Wyatt knew that the journey had just begun, filled with possibility and the promise of deeper connections waiting to unfold. So now, dear audience, you need to subscribe now to the channel. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share this story of transformation with at least 5 friends who need to witness this incredible journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm, and comment your reactions and theories about the journey we just unfolded. Your engagement means everything.